Okay, very good. So it's 6:30 right now, so let us begin. Well, first of all, thank you for being here. My name is Mr. J. Chin, and I will be the instructor for this course called After School Japanese. This is a small orientation to give the parents and the students an idea of what it would be that we would cover in this course. Um, just a small logistic thing, I will please ask everybody in as much as it's possible to mute their microphones in case of any unexpected background noise. I will stop at certain points throughout the presentation to take questions in case any arise. You are allowed to use the chat, of course, to ask those questions, or you can turn on your microphone and ask the questions as well. If you would prefer to ask the questions in Spanish, you may certainly do so, and I will answer in Spanish. There's no problem with that. So without further ado, let's get going. So I'm getting a message, thankfully it came up now, that there seems to be a small, technical glitch, and hopefully that's resolving itself. Otherwise, we'll handle it. If any of you are members of any group chats, such as class chats or things related to parents, I will ask you very kindly to share the link that I'm going to put in the chat right now, so that anybody can have access to this orientation, um, whether or not they signed up already for the orientation or not. This link should work for everybody. Um, Nevertheless, this orientation is being recorded, so everyone will be able to reference it once again. And I will encourage you to do so before you sign up for the course proper. So with that settled, let's start. So I'm just going to ask you to please let me know if you can actually see the presentation. So can we see the presentation still? It hasn't gone to black? Yes, perfect. Wonderful. Thank you so much. So this is a collaboration between ourselves, Lingua Logic, and Wesleyan Academy. This is a course that is being offered exclusively for Wesleyan Academy students. I know that some of you might not be Wesleyan Academy students, and I'm going to ask you to please hold off on your questions until the end. So I'm going to lay out some ideas, and then at the end we'll talk about a little bit about that aspect, and we'll get you into your proper place. So don't worry, I haven't totally disregarded you guys, but certainly this is a course made with the values and with the preparation that Wesleyan Academy gives you in mind. What I mean by that, very generally, is that I expect students to have the idea of college prep in mind. That is, that they're preparing themselves for a higher level of education. And I'm also presuming that they know a good deal of English, so that they can, if not think in English, but they can manage English without any large concerns. So our classes will be weekly. They'll be on Tuesdays from 4 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. Our first class will be in 2 weeks, so that'll be October 6th. This course, even though it's designed primarily as a synchronous course, synchronous just means that it's that the students are generally supposed to be there live. You can take it asynchronously because those classes will be recorded. The way that I'm going to work as an instructor with the asynchronous students and the synchronous students will be slightly different. And I'm going to encourage you to start thinking about which one you're going to decide to do, the synchronous version or the asynchronous version. We're all going to use the same material, but the way that I'm going to interact with you will be slightly different. This is a language course. So what I mean by that is very clearly it's a class on Japanese. It's not a cultural appreciation course, and it's not necessarily a recreational course in the sense that it's just something to do to blow off steam or to just spend some time with friends. At the same time, it is a course that doesn't presume any prior knowledge. It's a course that you can do without knowing anything about Japanese beforehand. All you need is an open mind, and we'll be good to go. This course is not part of the academic curriculum of Wesleyan Academy. That means that no matter how you do in this class, it won't really affect your grade. Nevertheless, I am going to give you a letter grade, and I'll explain why it further towards the end of this course. And just in case you just arrived, I will be the instructor. My name is Mr. J. Chin. What we're going to be doing in this course is that we're going to be learning to think about the language and how to express ourselves in the language. And you might be thinking, isn't the point of a language course to learn to think in the language? And that's a very valid question. The issue at hand is really twofold. On the one hand, we don't really have a environment to put you in as Puerto Ricans where you can learn Japanese in an immersion scenario. That is, when you go to a country and in order to literally survive, you must learn to speak the language and read the language and all of that. Your brain starts processing everything differently than if you're doing it as a hobby or you're doing it for a future goal. And because of that, you can't really force your mind to work in the think in manner. However, what we can do is start thinking about how the language works. That is the second issue, that Japanese doesn't look anything like English, and it doesn't look anything like Spanish. And we need to know some basic linguistic and basic grammatic terms and mechanics to see that there is a pattern throughout a huge variety of sentences and expressions. Once we understand that mechanic, that logic, we can start applying it into things that relate to us. That is, we can create sentences to talk about ourselves. So instead of teaching you guys how to say just good morning, how are you? I want one of these, I want one of those, can I exchange this for that? You know, going through those rote paradigms that kind of get you through a trip in Japan, I want us to know why each sentence means what it means. Because the moment that you escape that paradigm, right, you escape that pattern, someone tells you something you didn't expect, it's like you know nothing. And I need to make sure that you always know something, right? That you know what it is that you have to do in order to reach the correct answer. So with that being said, we'll move on to a little bit of the writing system, and I know that that kind of concerns people because you've probably heard, of course, that Japanese has hiragana, and it has katakana, and it has kanji. And are we actually going to use these, or are we going to use romaji, which is a kind of Roman script transcription of Japanese? The answer to that is that we will be using hiragana and katakana, and we are going to use kanji to a limited extent. Hiragana and katakana are phonetic scripts. That means that it only represents a sound. Kanji, on the other hand, represents general ideas. They're called logograms. They're not really symbols. And in standard Japanese, in order to read a newspaper without much issue, you have to know 2,136 kanji. And that takes time. It's not something that you can do on a weekend. It's not something that you can do even over the summer. This is something that takes time. And certainly we will take moments across our Japanese journey to study that. But we do have to start off with hiragana and katakana. Hiragana and katakana, however, is something you can do over the weekend. It's something that takes, 3 hours, 4 hours tops for each one. And it's something that you can do while having Netflix on the background, and it's fine. We're going to start using hiragana and katakana from the get-go because we need to ensure that you can start interacting with the language, even if it's on a very basic level. Nothing in Japanese is written in Roman script, really. So we do need to make sure that we have some orientation from the get-go. Lingua Logic teaches all its languages in a quote-unquote linguistic manner. What that means is that we study the language on the basis of mechanics. We don't necessarily rely on traditional grammars. A traditional grammar is something that you do learn at school. You learn things like the passive voice, and you learn things like the subject and the predicate. And sometimes it might sound funny, but sometimes that's not really what's at the heart of the matter. And you kind of lock yourself into a certain mentality that fits the specific language you're working with. But when we start talking in a bit more of a technical way, you start seeing how the languages all kind of are similar. They're different, but they all share lots of similarities. And this is what we're going to use in order to create more rich and meaningful ideas. I mentioned that this is not a culture course, you know, that we're not just talking about the Japanese culture and appreciating it, but culture does play a role in the language. The more you understand the culture, the more certain expressions make sense, and the reasons why you would say one thing versus another will also make sense. For example, in Japanese, everyone is very deferential to each other. You don't talk to people like they're your friends. So in many cases, the default is to speak politely to everyone. And there's a way of properly marking that politeness. And that's something that's very obvious to the Japanese culture. In our culture, where we like to be friendly towards everyone, it seems a little bit standoffish. And those are the kinds of things that we have to look at. At the same time, we will look at popular media. We're going to look at anime, we're going to look at manga, and we're going to look at dramas and other media. And we're going to look at them not because they look like the natural Japanese or the real life Japanese language, but because they are Japanese. And what that means is that there's important pieces of information that we can learn from all those media. It won't be every day, but we will use it from time to time. I will stop at this point to see if anybody has any questions. If we're good to go, we'll keep on going. So the class is going to be given via Zoom meetings. And what that means is that you are going to access the main page, lingualogicpr.com. You're going to enter your course, and then you are going to click on a module that says live class, and that's going to lead you to a button where you can click that, and it'll show you the course. It'll open up your Zoom application automatically. Those classes will be recorded for the asynchronous students. I'll also be posting certain assignments there as well. Included in the course enrollment fee is Genki 1 and Genki 2, and these will be our textbooks. These you do not have to buy, they will be delivered to you. These are the standard textbooks for Japanese in North America. There are other books out there, but when it comes to the American market, these are the preferred ones. These are great books for people who intend to do a study abroad program or something of that nature. They're also very good with explanations most of the time, and there's lots of resources for them, including many that we've created ourselves. So we'll be using those because they're a standard. And if you decide to study, continue studying Japanese in college, for example, you can tell them I studied Genki 1 and Genki 2, and that by itself lets the instructor know a lot. When you're only using the materials that a certain instructor has created, it becomes more difficult to measure your general proficiency compared to the people of the other school. So having a textbook like this, a well-known textbook, a widely used textbook, allows us to make sure that everybody, that everyone can recognize your skill level. Naturally, it doesn't mean that we're only going to use Genki, but it is going to serve as the guide into Japanese. There is homework, and this is very important. I take the idea of teaching a language very seriously, even if it is an after-school program, and that means that you do have homework, and it'll actually be quite a bit of homework. I expect it to be somewhere between 5 and 8 pages per week. So you will actually write out 5 to 8 pages of Japanese per week. And what that means naturally is that you can't really do it the night before. This is something that you have to take time to do bit by bit. And once you have all that done, I'm going to ask you to scan all those documents. If there's a voice recording component, I will ask you to do that in MP4 and then submit it via email. And there will be a certain format for that. If you're late on that, then I'm sorry. I do have to be strict with those homework deadlines. But at the same time, I understand that there's certain things that are beyond our control that come up. So I will encourage you all that even though the deadline is strict, please let me know beforehand if anything happens, and I will be happy to accommodate you in as much as is reasonable. Ooh, there you go. So in the spirit of college prep, I will teach classes in what's basically a college format. That means that part of the time will be dedicated to talking about a certain concept, which is basically grammar. And then the next, or the large chunk of the class will be working in exercises. At this point, even though everyone's microphones will be off, I will be inviting people one by one at random to turn on their microphones and give the exercise a shot. And this is a very important part of the class because it counts towards your participation grade. On that note, because I need people to be able to turn on their microphones, I will ask everybody to be in an area where they can speak in public. So I will encourage you all to make, whatever plans you need to do that. I understand, of course, that it's not reasonable to ask everybody to have a computer with high-speed internet on them at every point. But if you're going to use your phone or anything of that sort, make sure to be in a good spot. Make sure that you can use everything to keep up with the class. That component, having everything on you and having everything organized, it is your responsibility. But again, if there's something that is always going to be an issue, please let me know in advance. The last component of the class is just talking about culture, talking about how Japanese is different than Western culture, and talking about certain aspects that are pervasive in the language more than others. For example, religion. In Japan, the religion is really Shinto, and then they also have a stream of Buddhism as well. And those terms, for God, for spirit, for reincarnation and all that, do give the language a certain tone when you're talking about deities. And the conversations about, important things like God do play a certain role. At the same time, things like things that are just social, things like "tene," right? That's a very important word. It shows up everywhere. It means polite, but it also means proper. Because the proper thing is to do it the polite way. The word for different is the same word for wrong, "chigao." And you could imagine, when you want to make everything homogeneous, that if you're doing it differently, it means you're doing it wrong. The classes will be taught in English. This is true. The reason for that is that I believe in something called comprehensible input. All that means is that if I'm trying to explain something in a language that you don't know, you're not going to suddenly start understanding it. It means that in order for you to understand something, you need to understand the language. And that's where the idea of immersion, but doing it only once a week, starts falling apart very quickly. That being said, the more Japanese you know, the more I can speak in Japanese. And you'll see that bit by bit, you'll get a very comfortable grasp of the language. And by the end of it, except for certain grammar things, we can do the entire class in Japanese. I will be encouraging students, of course, to use more Japanese throughout. I'm not necessarily the strictest instructor in the world when it comes to just expressing yourself, talking about what's bothering you and all that. I don't need that to be done in Japanese for a very simple reason. I would prefer for you to tell me what's bothering you, what you need help in English, than for you to not tell me at all. So I need to be open to people just telling me what's up in English. And of course, if you need to do it in Spanish, that's fine too. Okay, so what do I expect out of the students? Very naturally, you should be able, or you should want to study Japanese. This is not the kind of course where I'm trying to motivate people to get interested in Japanese. Rather, I'm presuming that you are interested in Japanese for one reason or another, and then I'm going to open up your horizons a little bit and make you excited about various things. It's not, I can't really work with people who don't want to be here. And I know that there's people who are very good at that, but since this is an elective thing, I assume that everyone really wants to be here and to do the work. And that's very important, that you have the discipline to be consistent with coming to class, with participating, with doing your work. If you're an asynchronous student, that is a student that's not taking the course or taking the classes in every session, that means that I'm going to expect you to talk to me very frequently, to ask the questions that you've had while watching the video, and to talk to me about where you're having difficulties with the homework, because the homework is going to be your first time to really work with the material outside of probably, trying to follow along with the other participants during the live class. And that's a very important factor for me when I have to give a grade. And of course, everyone should be respectful of one another. I understand that in these times, there are incidents of cyberbullying and things of that nature, and everyone's a little bit on edge. And I don't like to vilify children. At the same time, I want to ensure that, at least for this, everybody, if not amicable, is respectful of each other, that we all understand that we're trying to reach the same goal, and that we know that in order to get to that goal, we do depend on each other. So I invite everybody to be a little bit more patient with one another than you might be otherwise. Learning Japanese, it's not easy, and our job is to make it easier for you guys. But you guys have to help us out in that as well. So I'll stop here and ask if anybody has any questions. If we're all good, then we will continue. Wonderful. Good. So the course, this is my grading criteria. Synchronous students have naturally an attendance component and a participation component. There are take-home exams that I will be giving. These will occur after your school term exams. That is, instead of doing the final like the same week that you would do your finals for school, it'll be the week after. And the reason why I do that naturally is so that you have more time to study for your proper school finals, and then you could handle Japanese. I don't want them to be two conflicting things. If you arrive 15 minutes after the class has started, that counts as an absence. And if you leave 15 minutes before the class ends, that also counts as an absence. Again, if there's any circumstances, you can let me know. Asynchronous students, the bulk of their grades come from the homework. And after that, I will be making sure that they're engaging with us. I understand that people can be shy. I know that people think that if they ask a certain question, that the instructor might be disappointed with them, or that they're somehow letting them down. And I'm fairly lenient because of that. At the same time, I will be constantly encouraging you to let go of that mindset and to just be open and be honest with yourself, and to be honest with me as the instructor, because I can't help somebody if I don't know what's going on. And believe me, when you're studying Japanese, it will be something, there will be a million things that will come up, and getting freaked out and getting disoriented and not, suddenly forgetting something that was over there in lesson one. That's extremely normal. And you just have to be a little bit patient with yourself, and open up about it, and we can get things going. So in terms of grades, it's very standard. Um, a, A minus, and then B minus, C and C minus, and then anything lower than a 70 I consider a failing grade. Why am I giving grades? I will explain later. At the same time, I understand that most of you are proud of your academic accomplishments. And I do believe that giving a letter grade, even if it's not for the reason that I'll tell you later, I do understand that it is a certain motivator. At the same time, remember that this is college prep. Not everyone's going to get 100. Part of it is struggling, and that's fine. I'm not setting up anybody for failure, mind you, but this is not the kind of thing that you can come in expecting to be perfect at from the get-go. It's an opportunity for growth. So if you suddenly get a B and you're normally an A student, if you get a C and you're a B student, if you fail a quiz, your response, I'm going to invite you to not think of it as a sign of definite failure. Think of it as a moment to sit down, evaluate how you're doing, and get in touch with me and talk about what it is that you need to do to move on. So you can't expect for this to be super easy. If I made this super easy, I would honestly be wasting your time, and I don't want to do that. So be aware that you might get A's, you might get B's, you might get C's. This will just keep on fluctuating. But I'm always rooting for you to get an A, and I always need to make sure that I'm doing what you need in order for you to get that A. I need to make sure that that A is possible. If everyone gets an F, then I know that I've failed as an instructor. So it's something for you all to keep in mind. So I wanted to first talk about the course, right, to get those ideas in mind. Just to recap very quickly, this is a Japanese course. It is a language course. It's Tuesdays from 4 to 5:30 p.m. You can take the course asynchronously. It's not necessarily the easiest course in the world because we will be handling hiragana and katakana our first 2 weeks, and you will get kanji throughout the class. Our textbooks will be Genki 1 and Genki 2. These are included in your enrollment fee, and you will be graded. And the bulk of your grades have to do with your homeworks, your participation, and then for the asynchronous students, outside of your homework, your engagement. You will have moments where you will need to talk to us about certain things, certain difficulties, and I will be encouraging you throughout to please do that. I don't want you to think that you're disappointing me or that this is something that it means you're dumb or something like that. No, this is very normal. And your job as a student, your obligation to yourself is to talk to your instructor about it. The instructor that will not answer your questions is not a good instructor. It's our job to make sure that we can do everything in our power to lead you to understanding. And that's something that I take very seriously. Outside of that, no, that's it. Good. Okay. I did a good job. Great. So about me, right? I wanted to talk about the course first, and then I wanted to talk about myself. So my name's Jay Chin. My grandfather's Chinese. It's not a Japanese last name. I'm a linguist. I specialize in Japanese, and I also do biblical Greek. My specialty within Japanese is linguistic variation, which means various ways of saying the same thing. Morphology, which is the way that a language changes its words, mainly verb conjugation. I'm very interested in how verbs conjugate in Japanese. And corpus linguistics. And corpus linguistics is using a huge set of written data in order to analyze the language. So most people, when they study, say, languages from the tribes of the Amazon, they will go to these tribes and ask people to talk and record them. And they work with a very small data set. They're asking these people questions and asking them about different ways of saying the same thing and all that. I, on the other hand, work with huge existing sets of information. So it's a little bit like data processing. And I learn about the language that way. When I talk to Japanese people, they all think they think I'm asking very, very, very specific questions. They don't know how to answer it. And something about the Japanese culture is that they don't like to say I don't know. They're very cautious to say that. Like they don't want to say no. So they find ways of getting around my questions, and it's a funny dynamic. So corpus linguistics, in a way, has allowed me to do everything that I'm doing. I'm doing a master's, so MPhil is just Master's of Philosophy, but it is in linguistics, at the University of Oxford. I'm actually here now. I'm in self-isolation. It's been my 4th day of self-isolation, and it's been quite interesting. My college is Wolfson College, by the way, if anybody knows about the collegial system in Oxford and in Cambridge. I'm part of Wolfson. And God willing, I will be done in 2022. Because there's a 5-hour difference, it's very easy for me to schedule these classes because they occur fairly late at night, and I have no problem with that. I've taught in Puerto Rico for 3 years. I've done group courses, and I've done plenty of private courses. We've seen dozens of people come in and out, get an appreciation for the language, and we've worked with ages. I think the youngest person we worked with was 10, and we've worked with someone who was 45. And thankfully, we've had a good amount of success throughout our time teaching. I try to present a positive energy, but my kids tell me that I tend to be strict. And I apologize for that if I come off kind of strong. I wrote this, right? Strict and demanding, but fair and empathetic. I think I try to balance those two things. As I've tried to demonstrate, I do take this idea of learning a language seriously. And to make sure that you do that, I can't start making too many concessions, because then I lose control of everything. At the same time, because I'm not a native speaker of Japanese, I'm just an expert in it. I know what it's like to struggle, and for that reason, I try to be empathetic. And I need to, and also because I'm fairly young, I'm 27 years old. I do have fairly clearly in my head what it's like to be a teenager, and I remember the kinds of things that one goes through as a teenager, and that it's not always so easy as just sitting down and saying, I'm going to make time for Japanese and just doing it. You have a million things on your mind. And for that, I do try to make some allowance and present things in a way that is more appealing. So I try to be fair. At the same time, I say all this, but I do have a very good rapport with my students. I care about them a lot, and I hope that shows. Okay, so that's basically me. So that's me. We already know about the course. And then the big question becomes, what do we do? So Genki 1 is beginner Japanese. Genki 2 is intermediate Japanese. I'll teach you a little bit more on top of that. But where does it go from there? If the goal is to learn Japanese, right, to master it, then you need something besides, this one course. So I'm glad to tell you that we do have certain plans in place to make sure that we do give some continuation to this, and also some certification to this. So we are still, talking with Wesleyan Academy. They're very enthusiastic about this program, and we're hoping that in the future we will have a class that's in your curriculum. That is, that you can take as an elective Japanese. In order to make sure that if we do get this opportunity, that you, as people who have already taken this class, don't have to go back to Japanese 1. We're gonna give you that letter grade to just show the school that you did do the work and that you did your best, and this is what you came up with. And if you have a passing grade, you should be able to go into intermediate Japanese. That means, of course, that there will be a beginner Japanese and an intermediate Japanese. Also, in the summer, we will be offering some continuation to this course. So anybody who wants to take the time to double down and study some more Japanese in the summer, will certainly be able to do so. In terms of certification, a lot of people ask, do I offer a certificate? And the answer is actually kind of surprising. The answer is no, but that's not the surprising part. The surprising part is that nobody does. And the reason for that is because the only certificate that's really recognized on a professional level is the JLPT. And the JLPT is a Japanese language proficiency test. This is the test that the Japanese government sponsors. This is the test that really, makes or breaks you, I think, as a professional trying to get into the Japanese market. And this exam comes in 5 levels. Level 5 is the easiest and level 1 is the hardest. At the end of this course, you will be able to do level 4. And then if you do the summer, you'll be able to do level 3. What does level 3 get you? Level 3 allows you to basically skip all your courses that you would do in college, because you've basically done most of it. If anything, they'll put you in like the most advanced group. But it really does mean that you have a very, very solid grounding in Japanese. I tend to do evaluations for students when they're thinking of doing things like this. My exams seem to be a little bit harder than the JLPT sometimes, so I can measure well beforehand if this is something that is right for you. Lingua Logic is trying to bring the Japanese language proficiency test to Puerto Rico. It's a bit of a tricky situation, especially with COVID-19. But we do hope that in some future we will have it. Nevertheless, the JLPT is given every first Sunday of December every year. And not this year because of COVID-19, but it will be an option next year. And it can be taken in various cities throughout the United States, including Miami, which is probably the closest to Puerto Rico. And if there's enough interest, we will arrange for students to go over real quick and take the exam and come back. And if we go as a group, obviously the cost will go down. That, if anything, maybe $500. The JLPT itself is not expensive. It's $60. But of course, plane fare and all that, and the hotel, all that, it does rack up. If you're interested in studying abroad in Japan, that is at the high school level, you will be able to do that having completed this course. You will know enough Japanese to do that. I will encourage you to talk with the school's administration about what you would need to do to ensure that you get all your credits at Wesleyan Academy, because that's where you're going to get your high school diploma from. And being a semester abroad might present some difficulties. We will encourage you throughout, and we'll give you any support that you need in that process. I will say that the more Japanese you know, the less things will cost. And that's just because the program itself, right? The people who arrange for these things don't need to do so much for you because you know the language. They can leave you with your host family, and your host family will speak basically only in Japanese, and you won't be totally disoriented or scared. And one of the great things about studying abroad is that you can do it both in more urban areas and you can do it out in the countryside. And I would definitely recommend that you visit the countryside because it's not what you see in the movies. The movies are mainly urban things. So leaving Tokyo, right, is a good experience. Okay, so for the older students, if your intention is to do a post-secondary degree, that is, do college in Japan, and you want to do a degree that's not in an international program, that is that like all your classes are going to be in Japanese, I will ask you to contact us at a different point, basically after this orientation, so that we can guide you through that. To be brief on that point, you will have to take the JLPT, and you will have to take an entrance exam that is given for foreigners. This exam can be taken in English and it can be taken in Japanese. It's unlike the SAT in that it doesn't cover like 3 basic subject matters. It actually covers a lot of subject matters. I think it's biology, chemistry, physics, social studies, Japanese. There's a Japanese section, and a couple of other things. So and mathematics, and you're expected to know these fairly well. And that takes some preparation. There's some resources for it. And on top of that, you do have to travel to take it. Obviously, it's not given in Puerto Rico. I'm talking too fast. I'm trying to be brief. So you do need to prepare for this, and we'll be happy to give you some more orientation on that about what's viable and what isn't. We like to be optimistic. If it's something you seriously want, we'll sit down and we'll figure out, what's the path to get there. But it certainly won't happen just because you want it. This is something you have to work at. I'll stop here. And again, ask if anybody has any questions. So remember that you can use your microphone to ask questions, but you can also type out a question in the chat. Okay, if there's no questions, then we will move on. Let me just make sure that. Great. So let's keep on going. So the last thing that we'd like to talk to you about in terms of the Japanese and not just the logistic things is talking about a possible trip to Japan. I know that Wesleyan Academy did have a trip planned for Japan for this year, and of course, because of the outbreak, it wasn't possible. We would like to suggest that we can start working towards a trip for 2022. So this would be after not 1 year, not 2 years, but 3 years of study. 2 years of study, right? From here to 21 and then to 22. So 2 years of study. So double the amount of Japanese you will know at the end of May. And the reason why it would be good to go to Japan as someone who studied Japanese is one reason is economic. The other reason is actually experimental. So when we travel abroad, we spend more money on comfort and on safety. When we don't know the language, when we're unfamiliar with the culture, it's somewhat difficult for us to tell what's authentic, what's inauthentic, and we sometimes just try to stick to what's familiar to us linguistically and culturally. And this is why, of course, places like Japan and Korea have Western style hotels, Western food, and all these things so that Westerners can feel comfortable while there. And for this, you pay a premium. You really do. And certainly for the casual traveler, this is a completely valid way of doing it. I would never, criticize someone for wanting to feel comfortable. At the same time, now that you know some Japanese, you know what's safe, you know what's unsafe, and you can sort of integrate into the culture a little bit more, into society, into Japanese society. So suddenly you're not paying a premium. So imagine a restaurant where in order to have a Western style meal, you probably pay $10, $12. And then imagine going to a very lively street food area and eating skewers and everything and filling yourself up, and it costs you maybe $5. And same thing with hotels in Shinjuku, the premium hotels, with a Western brand like Park Hyatt, etc. A night, for a twin room at night, it might be $400, $500. I think it goes up to probably $700. But if you're willing to stay at a Japanese style hotel, a good hotel, a clean hotel, it's in a good spot, you can spend less than $100 a night. And suddenly, because the cost of travel travel has gone down, you can spend more time there. And this is something that we're very interested in, not just doing a week trip, not doing a 2-week trip, maybe 3 weeks, but at least more than 2 weeks, and not just seeing, the big cities, Tokyo, Kyoto, but seeing other areas as well, and seeing them not from the perspective of this is something for tourists, but this is something that people do every day. And there's a number of things that we can do that are basically for Japanese people. One thing that we would love to do in Tokyo is to do college campus tours. So those same kinds of tours that you would do in the United States, you can do them in Japan. Todai, Tokyo University, has college tours. Waseda University has college tours. Sophia University has college tours. And these are all very prestigious schools. And certainly if you're naturally, you're all interested in doing post-secondary degrees. They're good to have in mind. You can also go to certain museums that are not available for everyone. So a good example of this would be the Samurai Sword Museum, which I think is in Asakusa in Japan. It doesn't have a lot of English. And a lot of people are kind of sad because of that. But this is something that you can do if you know Japanese, and you get to see those ancient swords, and learn about the history. In Kyoto, there's actually a kanji museum, which is very, very interesting. It's very cute. And that's another thing, that it's in a good area. Everyone just passes by it everyone that's not Japanese just passes by it because it's not accessible to them. The Studio Ghibli Museum, right? The famous Studio Ghibli movies by Hayao Miyazaki. That museum is totally in Japanese as well. So you can go in, you can look at the things, but you can't read anything and learn more about the process of making these films. And also Tokyo Disneyland, which I absolutely adore, has tours, and the tours are only in Japanese. So they're very similar to the Walt Disney World Resort tours. If any of you have been on those, they're similar to that. And they're only in Japanese. And if you know Japanese, suddenly that's accessible to you. And you can do something that not many people get to do. So our goal would be to do things that otherwise you really wouldn't get to do. Also, we would like to have you experience onsen and ryokan at the very least, which are natural hot springs, and then the hotels where people stay to enjoy those hot springs. And these are normally small, remote towns that are run, and the hotels are run by families. And again, it's something that not everyone gets to do. I would really enjoy, being able to set that up for everyone, to have a traditional Japanese experience. Looking at things about religion is also naturally an option. What does it mean to be Buddhist in the Japanese context? What does Shinto mean exactly? Those are actually very, very important questions when you think about Japanese society, and the answer isn't always very clear. And Kyoto is certainly the center of Buddhism in Japan, outside of certain other areas of the cities. It's really Kyoto. Hiroshima is one of these cities as well, that it's a big city, but it's not like one of the main cities. And the further outside of the eastern side of Japan you go, the more you find just people living their daily lives. And that's something that I believe is important to appreciate. What does it mean to just, be 9 to 5, working 9 to 5? What does a normal restaurant look like when you're not trying to put up a gimmick to attract the tourists? What does the restaurant end up looking like? What do normal stores look like? Because again, when you're in the city, everything it has to be attractive for tourists as well. But what does, you have on the one hand, like the big flashy game stores of Akihabara, which is kind of, some people call it like the gaming mecca. It's not really that. But you could find those same products everywhere else throughout Japan. What does the mom and pop game store look like? What kind of service do you get at the mom and pop bookshop that you don't get in Tokyo? And those are, I think, very, very meaningful things to experience. There's also, of course, right, the matter of the atomic bomb, and that museum, which is obviously it's very sad, but it's also very impressive in everything that they do. And from any city, you can go to different rural villages and see how they live and see how they, in their own way, are opening up to visitors. But they presume that everyone just knows Japanese and that they're open to eating fish. And it's interesting to see how they make concessions and how they bridge that language barrier. And of course, we won't have that. So uh, because it's an educational trip, naturally, the idea is not, okay, guys, here's Japan, just go crazy. We will give students a certain degree of freedom, within a specific area, and we will tell them what they need to do so they can enjoy everything fine, but they do need to do something specific. They won't be helped for food. They won't be helped with buying things. That's something that they have to do by themselves. On the other hand, parents who haven't taken these lessons, they get the support of our staff, and we'll be helping you guys out throughout the whole thing to ensure that you as well enjoy your time in Japan. If the group is large enough, we don't know what that'll look like 2 years from now. We will naturally charter buses for certain things. And then for everything else, we'll use public transportation. And public transportation in Japan is nothing like public transportation in Puerto Rico. It's nothing like public transportation in New York City. This is like a total different world. It's extremely efficient. It's extremely clean. It's very pleasant to do, at least as a tourist. So it's really something worth experiencing. It really is. In this trip, we would include the accommodation and transportation. We would not include meals and of course, any personal purchases that you would make. And this is something that we would like to propose to you as something that you can start working towards. Some of you might not be at the age where, like, you're, 2 years from now, you're not going to have a job necessarily. But it's something that can start getting you motivated to take the classes seriously. And once you've been to Japan and you've been there a while, that you kind of understand what life is like in Japan, you can make a more sober decision about whether or not you want to live in Japan or if you want to study in Japan. So this is a good first step in all of that. So also, just to let you know, this is a proposal thing. This is something that we would love to talk to you about moving on, if it's something that you're interested in, so that we can go formalizing it. And of course, with the parents, we can start adjusting it to make sure that everybody is happy and any particular needs will be taken care of. So it's not something that is set in stone, take it or leave it. No. This is something that we can start forming together. Having in mind that, of course, it's going to be something specialized for people who already know a good amount of Japanese. Okay, so that's basically that. I would like to stop here and see if anybody has any questions about this proposed trip. Again, if you have any questions, you can use the chat, and you can use your microphone as well.
Hi, just joined late. Can you please let us know what would be the size of your class?
Oh, thank you for asking. And thank you for being here. The truth is that we don't know what the size is going to be yet. We do have a cap, a technical cap, which is 100 students. We don't think that we'll have 100 students, but we do expect it to be somewhere around 10 to 15. And that's a perfect size. That's really, hitting the sweet spot. If it were to become the case where we sit down and we say, look, I can't do a good class with 25 students, I need to break it up into 2. We'll handle it then, where we'll say we're going to need to have a second class on Thursday, for example, and see how we can divide the class. But our sweet spot is really no more than 15. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Is it going to be dedicated for Wesleyan Academy students, or?
Yes. So anybody who is interested, who is not a Wesleyan Academy student, I've asked them to just hold on until the end, and I'll talk about that a little bit. So the answer is that the answer is going to be that the course is designed for Wesleyan Academy students in mind, but I won't necessarily exclude anybody out of it as long as they understand certain factors.
Okay. What about age? Is there a range that you're targeting?
Okay. Our range is 12 plus. So middle school and high school, that would be our range. At the same time, if it's a decision that you make as a family, say you have someone who's 10 years old who really wants to do this, I would encourage you to talk to me, right? Send me a message and we can sit down and we can talk about it a little bit. I don't want to set anyone up for failure. And this really isn't something that a smaller kid could do. At the same time, it doesn't mean that I'm not interested in helping them. And that's something that I would really want to do. Make sure that even if they're not taking this course, that I'm giving them some resources so that they can learn at their appropriate level.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Adriana Candelabria asks, would we be able to go visit shrines? The answer to that is yes. Many areas have, well, generally Japan is just full of shrines. And you will be able to go and see as many of them as you would like. We will give you a small lecture on visiting shrines. There's a certain etiquette to doing it, and there's certain sensibilities that go into that, and we would want to make sure that everyone is being respectful of what that shrine represents and what the priests of that shrine would expect you to do. So yes, the answer is absolutely. We will visit shrines. I will, but at the same time, I want to make sure that everyone who is visiting a shrine and doing that is being respectful. Great. Do we have any other questions? Okay, so you mean the synchronous course and the asynchronous course, Yamil? Okay, great. So the synchronous course, they're all the same course, really. It's just the ways in which you're doing it. So the synchronous course, or the synchronous way of doing it, means that you are logging in at 4:30, or I'm sorry, at 4 p.m. and coming into the class and participating with us live. And that you will be graded on your participation. The recordings of those classes will still be available to you. People who are doing it the asynchronous manner are people who are not coming in at 4, and they're only coming in at a different point and watching the recording. And for them, the real challenge is to make sure that they're on top of things. They don't have that pressure of that they're going to participate. And for that reason, I will be fairly demanding that they keep in touch with me, that they just not, they don't just kind of get lost. I never hear from them. I never get homework from them, or I only get homework from them, and every time that I correct something, they never change it. So I want to make sure that if you're doing it in a asynchronous manner, that you're still taking it seriously. And that's something that asynchronous students will slowly get adjusted into. Does that answer your question? Great, perfect. Does anyone have any other questions? Okay, if we're all set, then we'll continue into, oh wait. So a person has messaged me at the end of the course, will we be able to understand conversational Japanese? The answer to that is yes and no. So the only reason I'm saying and no is because naturally it depends what you're having a conversation about. You will be able to understand, basic day-to-day things. That I went here to do this. I've bought some of this. I've had this experience in the past. Things like that. That kind of stuff is totally doable. That's no problem. If you're talking about more technical things, like maybe talking about video games and like video game terminology, that kind of stuff we probably won't cover. Nevertheless, you will know enough about how Japanese works that if you were to look up an article about, terms about video games, that you'll be able to understand how everything is pieced together. That is, you will have the ability to learn about the language. So it's not all dependent on just me telling you things, but that you will be able to learn things. And it actually happens to me a lot where some of my students will just show up with some term that I've never heard before. And it's just because it's not something that I get to see every day, but they heard it on a show or something like that, and they're implementing it, and they're teaching me things. So I do get that a lot. So the answer is yes. Any other questions? Okay, if we're all good to go, then we'll continue. Oh, okay, great. So about payments, this is the part that I don't want to talk about, so this is why I put it at the end. It's not the kind of thing that I like to talk about with kids. My role as a student, as a teacher, is always to teach. I believe that that's my relationship with students. I don't believe in charging students for my service, because that's something that I have to handle with the parents. Nevertheless, because there are parents here, I do want to just cover this so that everybody is on the same page. So firstly, this course does run from October to May, and you can pay for it in one installment, which is $910, or you can pay it on a monthly plan, in which case it's $120 a month for 8 months. The total will be $960. You do have the option to just finish paying everything off in advance, and I don't have any problem with that. At the same time, you can pay, these 3 months and then pay off the next semester in 2 installments. I have absolutely no problem with that. What do we accept? If you're going to use the Thinkific system, that is, Thinkific is where we have our platform, then you will be using PayPal and Stripe. So PayPal is for the single installment, and Stripe is for the monthly installments, and those take all major credit cards. So Visa, American Express, Discover, and etc. MasterCard. Okay. We also accept ATH Móvil. So our system, even though of course it's automated, we can manipulate it manually. So you can make payments through ATH Móvil, and for that we ask that you use the path Lingua Logic. And if you're having trouble with that application, we can give you our number so that you can make payments directly to that number. We also accept cashier's check. We don't accept personal checks. They do have to be cashier's checks, also known as teller's checks. And you would make them out to my name, Jay Chin. And then you can also do a money order, which would be Western Bank, etc. And again, they would be to my name, Jay Chin. We also do accept the bank wires, so you can wire the money directly. So we've given you plenty of options in case something doesn't work out for you. If you are not using PayPal, then that means that at a certain point we will send you a message again with the instructions of how to work everything out so that everyone's on the same boat and everyone knows what to do. When are payments due? And I think this is something that I really covered. Payments are going to be due the first Sunday of the month. So that's kind of the way that I've laid it out, and I will give you a grace period of 1 class. So what do I mean by a grace period of 1 class? What I mean is that I will, if you're late on a payment, I will not suspend the student's account for the next class. So if Sunday comes, then that Tuesday, if there hasn't been any payment, I'll be perfectly fine with it. After that, I do need to suspend service until that payment is made. This is something that I have to do to protect Lingua Logic's interest. It's not something that I like to do at all. This is the kind of thing that makes me sick to my stomach, but unfortunately, I've had situations where these kinds of things do come up. I will be giving you registration forms, and I will be contacting the parents for these kinds of things, or parents or guardians, of course. This is not the kind of thing that I discuss with students. So please don't expect your student or your child to come and say the teacher said that a payment is due. This is not something I cover with them, because that's not the relationship I have with them. I'm there to teach them Japanese. I'm not there to charge them money. So always be, attentive to your email, etc., in case of anything. Okay. I mentioned that you will be receiving a message from us, of course. Or I'm sorry, in the registration form, you will be receiving something you will be marking what your payment method's going to be, and then you will be you will get some information from us based on that. If you don't get the information, please do contact me to make sure that I do send it. Because I'm in the United Kingdom, I don't have my phone service on, and you can imagine that the cost would be prohibitive. So I am using WhatsApp nevertheless, so 787-414-5782, and you can contact me there. And this is a US number, so +1 787, of course. So what does it look like from here on out? So if you decided to take this course, which would be wonderful, you will sign up on Thinkific if you're using PayPal. If not, then send me a message saying I'd like to sign up. Tell me what the first step is. So for that first step, you will need to contact me directly, and we'll get you set up. We will set you up with an account if you don't have one already on the Thinkific platform, and then you'll be good to go. So once you have that, you will get some enrollment forms, which I will need you to fill out and sign. And because you need to sign it, you will need to print it out and then scan it. So there's a number of pieces of information that I'll need. One of them is actually your student identification form for Wesleyan Academy. They need to know all their students who are with us. So you'll need to give, some proof of that. And then there will be something for us, which is an identification form for the logistics on our side. And this includes family information, a limited amount of family information, just so that we know who are the people who we can talk to if something occurs with the student. And then a contract with Lingua Logic, which is basically terms and conditions. So that means understanding being very clear again about what this is about, when this class happens, what do we expect to happen in the class, and that the student be clear about all these things. So it's something that I'm going to invite everyone to fill out as a family, that everyone get together and look at the material and go over it together, because the students will have to sign 2 out of these 3 forms, and I need to make sure that everyone is on terms with that. There is a code of conduct, by the way. It's very common sense. So no foul language, no, if you're ever on camera, obviously be decent. Don't harass or bully anybody, so I'm sure that everybody will be okay on that front. And we will ask you to submit this before the first day of class. Obviously, things happen. So if you're going to be a little bit late on that, I don't have a problem, as long as you let me know beforehand. Okay, so that's basically the presentation. Let me just speak very briefly about anybody who is here who is not a Wesleyan Academy student. This course is designed for teenagers, really, or at least, tweens and teenagers. And it's designed for people who are attending a preparatory English-based school. And the way that these students have been taught to think about certain things, including the English language, is not necessarily the same way that everyone else has been taught to do it. This is not to say that it's better. It's not to say that it's worse. All I'm saying is that I know how these students work, and I've created something to suit their needs and their goals. So I can't necessarily guarantee that this is going to be the right fit for you. I would consider things like how much English do you know? What age are you? If you're 30 and you want to take this, your interests might not overlap with the students. If I ask them to do a group project. You know, I can't ask a 30-year-old to interact with a 14-year-old privately. You know, I can't set people up for these kinds of situations. And Lingua Logic we will be offering a course in January for teens and for adults, which is not presuming that you come from Wesleyan Academy. So certainly, if you're willing to sit down and think about your own background, if you think it's very comparable to Wesleyan Academy in terms of background and age, you know, that you're generally of the same kind of demographic, then I have absolutely no problem with you joining. I can't, on the other hand, recommend in good conscience that just anybody do it. And I would not recommend, in case there's any parents with a child who's not here, I would never recommend that you sign them up for this without their consent. So don't ask them, grab this, sign here, and oh yeah, by the way, you've signed up for Japanese for a year. Please don't do that. And that's the same, you know, it doesn't matter if you're in Wesleyan Academy or you're somewhere else. I want everyone who's going to be there to be there because be here because they want to. So just to recap some points very quick, a little bit of everything, right? Firstly, the course, it's a weekly course. It's 90 minutes a week. You do have homework, and it's something that you have to work at little by little throughout the week. We will be using 2 textbooks, Genki 1 and Genki 2. They're included in your enrollment fee, and they will be delivered to you. That's a piece of information you'll give us in the forms. You can do the course asynchronously, absolutely. You will be graded more on your interaction with me if you're doing asynchronously, and then if you're doing it synchronously, there's more emphasis of naturally on your participation. I'd like, on a side note, I'd like you, if you're going to do this, to commit to one thing or the other. Don't try to flip-flop, you know, among them. So I don't want to get a message every month saying, I'm going to do it asynchronously this month. This is not necessarily the easiest course in the world because we are doing something difficult. You know, we are learning a language. You know, it's not, you know, making a birdhouse. This is something that takes time, and it's something that's complex. And I take that very seriously. I want to make sure that you're moving towards that. So I would say take this as seriously as you take your as you take your school courses. Don't have this as like some trivial thing. When we finish this course, there will be options to continue. We'll do something in the summer, and then hopefully, God willing, we'll have something within the Wesleyan Academy curriculum. Naturally, I cannot guarantee that, but we will be working towards that. Based on your grade, which you will get, we can make a determination whether you will be in intermediate Japanese, or you will be, or you can, you know, do beginning Japanese again. And that would be great. This course doesn't lead you to mastery naturally, but we will be on our way, and we can help you get further along with these courses, and also provide some experiences for you. Number 1, the JLPT, which is a good exam to have, a good certification to have. Once it becomes available again after COVID-19. We will, if we're not offering it in Puerto Rico, we will coordinate so that we can do a small field trip in order to do that. We will as well help you if you want to study abroad in Japan, either as an exchange student or doing college in Japan. As an exchange student, naturally, you do have to talk with the administration to make sure that your credits are not compromised. And they'll get in touch with us about it, and we'll have a good conversation about it. Ideally, of course, we would have a program set up, basically, you know, like a clear road for anybody who wants to do this in the future. And then if you want to study in Japan, naturally, you'll have to, or you want to do a post-secondary degree in Japan, naturally, you'll have to do a little bit more stuff. I'm sorry, you will have to take an exam, which covers a number of materials, and you will have to do the JLPT. But again, if we pace ourselves correctly, that's possible. So again, please contact us if you have that, if you have that interest. If you want to intern in Japan, by the way, um, that might be possible once you graduate, but I can't guarantee it. But certainly, if you want to work in Japan while you're a student, like that's totally doable. And again, it's a good experience because you're just living day-to-day life in Japan. So I wouldn't disregard that either. Okay. So that aside, we are proposing a trip to Japan, right? So this trip would happen in 2022. By the way, if you have graduated, and you still want to participate in the trip, you can do that. I have absolutely no problem with that. This would be a trip for people who do know some Japanese. We'll be taking advantage of that in order to have certain experiences that you wouldn't be able to get otherwise, and to get a perspective on Japan and its culture. Because we're not paying a premium for comforts, or for home comforts, better said, the price will go down, and it'll allow us to be in Japan for longer and naturally not break the bank. While the students, of course, will be enjoying certain things with their ability, we will be taking care of the parents. We'll be making sure that they know what's going on, that they're comfortable, and that they're enjoying themselves as well. So that'll be handled by the Lingua Logic staff. This proposed trip isn't something that I would like to, I want you to think of as something set in stone, take it or leave it. If not, as something that we can discuss as a group, and we can modify and make sure that everybody has the options they need to enjoy themselves. I should also note, naturally, that any people who are going alone, so any parents that are sending their children alone, there will be a chaperone for the kids who are traveling alone. So there'll be a chaperone for the males, and there'll be a chaperone for the females. Naturally, the chaperone for the males is male, and the chaperone for the females is female. So that's also very important for us, that parents, if they're going to do that they feel secure. That their child is safe, and that someone's looking over them, or the appropriate person is looking over them. In terms of payments, it will be $910 for the year, or 8 monthly payments of $120. There are options available, payment methods available, including PayPal and Stripe, which is through our website, ATH Móvil, cashier's check, money order, and direct bank wiring. If you would like to use any of those methods that is not PayPal and Stripe, please contact us at jchin@lingualogicpr.com, or at 787-414-5782 via WhatsApp, because it's the way that I would receive the information. If you have the need to use a traditional phone, please let us know. Like you would like to have a conversation via traditional phone, because you're having issues with the internet or something like that. Please let us know so that we can set that up. So again, my number is 787-414-5782 via WhatsApp. Once you register, you will get some forms to fill out, including one that's for Wesleyan Academy. If you're not part of Wesleyan Academy, I will not disallow you from joining the course. Nevertheless, please have in mind that it is made with these students in mind, and that you might not necessarily fit into that mold. And that's not a good thing. That's not a bad thing. It is what it is, and it's important for Lingua Logic to cater to specific needs, so as to increase efficiency. We do have a Japanese for teens and a Japanese for adults. We do have those courses that are starting in January. So if you're interested in those, or you would be interested in something else for a broader demographic or for adults, we invite you to look at that. So that's basically it. So one more time, I would like to just open the floor for questions that anybody may have. So we have tienen una clase de prueba. La prueba que se ofrece es el GOPT. El GOPT, el único examen o la prueba que se reconoce a través de las universidades, que es el detalle más importante, y también las corporaciones. Si no es con el JLPT, básicamente cualquier certificado de una escuela no cuenta. Y es el problema. Y por tal razón, las escuelas no ofrecen certificaciones privadas, para decirlo de una forma. Uno puede coger el JLPT en los Estados Unidos, que es lo que le habíamos mencionado, que se puede coordinar un viaje a Miami para que puedan tomar el examen, o, ¿verdad?, con la gracia de Dios, que se nos dé y que se pueda ofrecer en Puerto Rico. Si van a estudiar en Japón, en el sentido de que van a hacer un bachillerato en Japón, entonces tienen que coger un examen estandarizado para eso, como el College Board. Excepto que el examen de Japón es mucho más variado, tienen que saber de física, de química, de biología, de matemáticas, trigonometría, geometría, y hay una sección en japonés. Todo lo demás se puede coger en inglés, pero sí hay una sección en japonés. Y encima de eso hacer el JLPT. Y eso, y el punto de ese examen nada más es para entrar a la universidad. Para todo lo demás que sea profesional es el JLPT. ¿Hay otras pruebas que existen? Sí. Y qué exactamente están probando, o sea, eso hay una gran variedad de cosas que están tratando de probar. Por ejemplo, el JLPT no tiene una sección de conversación, o sea que uno puede coger el examen sin hablar el japonés propiamente. Lo puede leer, lo entiende, o sea que cuando lo escucha lo entiende, pero no lo tiene que hablar. Y hay otros exámenes donde el 50% es hablando. Y el único problema es que ese examen no lo reconocen las corporaciones más importantes, como SoftBank, Toyota, Nissan, Mazda. Si uno quiere trabajar para esas corporaciones, lo que necesita es el JLPT. Que naturalmente entendemos que es una deficiencia dentro del sistema, pero siempre y cuando sea así, pues tratamos de orientar a las personas en lo que les es más prudente. Any other questions? Ok, las clases comienzan así. Sí. Perdonen, sí. Vamos a empezar el 6, para empezar propiamente, para darle a las personas que van a estar viendo este video, para darle más tiempo. Sí, y también era algo de logística, pero sí, perdónenme, sí, hemos tenido, si hay una discrepancia en lo que he dicho y lo que está en la página web, se harán las modificaciones hoy. Any other questions? El horario. Empezamos a las 4 y terminamos a las 3:30. La tendencia mía es extenderme si es necesario y naturalmente darle la libertad a las personas a desconectarse si tienen otra cosa que hacer en ese momento. Trato de no empezar las clases temprano para no perjudicar a una persona que está terminando algo. Y fuera de eso, pues son, ¿cuánto sería en total? 32. Son 32 clases. Si me acuerdo bien, pero es desde el primer martes de octubre hasta el último de mayo. Sí, la reunión va a estar publicada con la gracia de Dios mañana y lo podrán ver. También voy a hablar con la administración de Wesleyan Academy para que tengan acceso, o para que tengan acceso y puedan distribuir el enlace al video para que todo el mundo lo pueda ver. Los libros, porque están saliendo de Puerto Rico, se demoran 2 días, 2 o 3 días máximo. El detalle de que hay problemas con el correo, de verdad tiene que ver con los Estados Unidos propiamente, o si se va a mandar al extranjero. En esos casos, pues, se pueden tardar meses, pero lo que es local llega rapidísimo. Any other questions? Okay, so remember that if you would like to ask a question out loud, that you most certainly can with your microphone. Okay, so I think we're all set. Again, my phone number is 787-414-5782. And you can contact me basically if it's a text message or a WhatsApp message, you can contact me throughout the day. There's no problem. If you would like to talk to me um, in person, then I would ask you to call me after 10 a.m. Between 10 a.m. and maybe from 10 to 12 is really my sweet spot, just generally. Naturally, if you call me and I'm not available, I will take the call very briefly, and we'll find some time to get back to you. But I don't want anybody to have any questions, before making a decision. Feel free to ask me as many things as possible. And I hope that this orientation has encouraged you to sign up and to, more importantly, start that journey of learning Japanese. I'm looking forward to all future questions, and I'm also looking forward to meeting you all. Again, jchin at jsubexperiment.com, 787-414-5782. Stay tuned to your pages so that you can see the recording of this orientation. So with that all taken care of, thank you very much for your time and attention, and God bless.